Custom Coasters International was one of the most ambitious wooden roller coaster manufacturers in amusement history. They only lasted a decade from 1991 to 2002, but made their mark by building 34 coasters worldwide. Currently, there are 28 which remain. Only 3 CCIs have ever been demolished, 2 live on as Rocky Mountain Construction hybrid coasters, and 1, Megazeph at Six Flags New Orleans, has been rotting away since 2005 when Hurricane Katrina decimated the park. But it's still good to see that so many parks are willing to invest in the expensive maintenance costs these rides require, as there isn't another manufacturer that's ever built coasters quite like CCI. When they went under in 2002, you did have many designers that branched off to form the Gravity Group or to join Great Coasters International. While these are both excellent companies who have done some incredible work, I still think one could make the argument that CCI was the best company to ever specialize in wooden roller coasters. A unique characteristic of their rides is they never like to bank their track all that much. This results in excessive lateral forces that allow a wooden coaster to feel more alive. It does unfortunately mean a lot of stress is placed on these sections of track, therefore making them difficult to maintain. I understand why the Gravity Group and GCI didn't continue doing this, but like I said, this allows CCI's rides to feel very unique. Now, I've only ridden 19 of the 28 CCI roller coasters in operation, and because this is a personal top 10 list of their coasters, I did want to give an honorable mention to some of the rides I haven't done, particularly here in the States. First and foremost, I have yet to visit an amusement park called Indiana Beach, which is home to 3 awesome CCI coasters. You've also got some small family-owned amusement parks whose headlining attractions are CCIs. These include Rampage at Alabama Adventure, Excalibur at Funtown Splashtown USA, and New Mexico Rattler at Cliffs Amusement Park. I also want to shout out Megaphobia at Oakwood Theme Park, which looks great, but with it being all the way out in Wales, I doubt I'll be riding it anytime soon. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with our number 10 CCI, Stampede at PortAventura. Honestly, I think I had like 4 CCIs in contention for number 10, so I'm not totally confident in my decision to have Stampede on here, but I figured I'd give it the edge because it does do something cool that no other ride on this list does. Throughout the 3,100-foot layout, you're able to race another train, and I think it was done exceptionally well on this coaster. For the majority of the ride, you duel side by side with the opposing train, but there's also a few moments where you branch off and it looks like you're going to ram into each other. Looking at each track individually, I don't think the layout for Stampede was anything too special. You do have the trademark underbanked turns that do deliver some nice laterals, but there's very little airtime and the ride does slow down at a few points, hindering the pacing. For the next 9 rides on this list, I have little to no bad things to say and 100% believe that they deserved a top 10 spot. Number 9, Zeus at Mount Olympus Theme Park. This interesting location in the Wisconsin Dells is home to 3 roller coasters by CCI, 1 mediocre, 1 good, and 1 great. Zeus is that great ride. When I first entered Mount Olympus, I think I was so fixated on their standout coaster, which funnily enough is a Gravity Group, that I overlooked Zeus, not expecting a whole lot from it. But this ride honestly kinda blew me away, and I hate that I couldn't rank it any higher. The out and back layout may not be the longest at just 2,900 feet in length, but virtually every element they packed in here was excellent. You've got a whole bunch of airtime moments, some sustained, others quick bursts of ejector. And it's accentuated by the use of the terrain, which allows Zeus to dip further than you expect on a few of these drops. Better yet, it was running extraordinarily smooth during my visit, which I was very pleasantly surprised to see, especially since Hades 360 in the same park was very rough. Overall, just a super fun, re-rideable coaster that would make a visit to this park alone worth it. Number 8, Tremors at Silverwood. This remote park located in North Idaho is home to 2 distinctly different CCIs, and Tremors is hands down the better of the 2. In my opinion, this is easily one of the most creative layouts the manufacturer's ever built. I guess it's sort of an out and back design, but it's also got this spaghetti bowl section in the middle, which we'll get to in a second. But on these out and back sections, Tremors contains 2 tunnels each that accentuate the sense of speed and are separated by outstanding airtime bunny hills. In between, there's also that absolute mess of track, as I said, which is very lateral heavy. And something interesting about that part of the ride is a lot of the wood track has been replaced by steel track from Rocky Mountain Construction. Usually I'm not a fan of this because I do think wooden coasters should stay wooden, but even I'll admit, sustained lateral forces on a silky smooth track like this feels really cool. Oh, and by the way, if you get the chance to ride any of these coasters at night, you definitely should, because woodies are a whole different breed when the sun goes down. But Tremors especially provides a killer night ride, and thinking back to those experiences has me real tempted to place this higher. Number 7, Tenere to Zeus at Park Asterix. Now this is a bit of an interesting case because it's the first ride on this list that's had some significant modifications done by other manufacturers. From 1997 to 2021, this was strictly a CCI through and through, but in 2022 the Gravity Group came in and added some new track, reprofiled one of the turns to bank 90 degrees, and gave the ride new tempered liner trains. I never got to ride this coaster in its original form, but I have to say, I think Gravity Group did a great job breathing new life into this ride. It was running absolutely amazing when I visited last year, and I was floored by their new backwards facing seats. That's right, this is the only roller coaster on this list that you're able to ride in reverse, and it is an experience unlike anything else. If we were judging Tenere to Zoo solely off of a backwards ride, this would easily be in the top 5 for me, but facing forward and it would likely be a spot or 2 lower, so I think 7 is a good compromise. The layout for this ride is absolutely massive and loaded with airtime hills of varying shapes and sizes. It does slow down considerably on those final few elements, which is a bit of a bummer, but everything else about this attraction is awesome. Number 6, Raven at Holiday World. Welcome to the park with the world's best wooden coaster lineup in my opinion. You've got one by the Gravity Group and 2 from CCI, and somehow Raven is the weakest of the bunch. Despite this, the ride's a little powerhouse as it tosses you around like a rag doll. Particularly, it's the second half of this coaster that really sticks out because the pacing is amazing and the trees all around you make you feel like you're going faster than you actually are. Like Zeus, I'd definitely say Raven is one of the shorter rides on this list, but the fact that it was able to make it all the way to number 6 speaks volumes about this ride's focus on quality over quantity. And breaking into the top 5 is Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. I feel like with most of these rides, coaster enthusiasts can unanimously agree that they're pretty great. Boss is perhaps the only one that is extremely divisive, and I think that's because some years Six Flags St. Louis does not do the best job maintaining this coaster. But when I rode it in 2021, I thought it had just enough bite without being too rough a ride. Layout-wise, this coaster is absolutely ginormous, and I'm shocked more people don't talk about that. The drops are so big and the subsequent bursts of speed are so intense that I think there's an argument to be made that this is the most intense roller coaster on this list. It is a bit of a bummer about the trim brakes in the middle of the ride, but I can assure you most of the 4,600 feet of track is absolutely crazy. And once again, a night ride on this thing is totally out of control. Number 4, Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. This is what is for many the best roller coaster CCI's ever built, and I think you could make the argument for anything in my top 5 honestly. It's most likely the fact that this is one of my home park coasters that it doesn't go higher, because I've ridden it so many times in so many different conditions. But something that never gets old is the variety in this layout. It is jam-packed with airtime, quick transitions, and perhaps the best laterals of any coaster in the world. It's either this or another ride we'll get to later. I've always really enjoyed the first half of Ghost Rider, but in my opinion it's the second half where this coaster really lets its foot off the gas. The pacing is just bar none, absolutely out of this world. It's also the smoothest coaster on this list because Great Coasters International came through and gave it a huge revitalization in 2016. Last point I'll make, I know I've mentioned night rides a few times already, but seriously, Ghost Rider is the king of night rides. Probably the best ride on this entire list to do late at night. You will not regret it. Number 3, Boulder Dash at Lake Compounds. This is one of those coasters that over time has slowly climbed up my rankings, and it's not because I've gotten re-rides, but because I've realized it's basically a perfect wooden roller coaster. To be honest, I don't think there's much you could do to improve it. For starters, the setting and terrain interaction of this ride is amazing, as you would expect from a coaster named Boulder Dash. It allows it to maintain a phenomenal speed throughout the layout, which is absolutely necessary for these hills to deliver airtime and these turns to pin you to the side of the train. It's an incredibly unique first half that I absolutely love, but it's also great that it throws in a classic outbound series of airtime hills to further diversify the layout. The setting for this ride, the forces on this ride, and the pacing of this ride are actually so outstanding that it rightfully puts this small park on the map for roller coaster enthusiasts around the globe. And at number 2, we have Legend at Holiday World. Once again, give it up for this flawless wooden roller coaster. Unlike Raven in the same park, this is an exceedingly long ride with more than 4,000 feet of track and so many different elements. The drops and airtime on Legend are all fantastic, and I love the exceptional pacing of this ride, but earlier I said there was one coaster that challenges Ghost Rider for the best laterals, and that's Legend. There are so many different instances where you will be crushed by the person sitting next to you, but I especially want to highlight the double helix, which is partially covered by tunnels. Even with so many great moments, this is probably my favorite part of the ride for being just so absolutely insane. But it's still not my favorite CCI, and I think many of you are probably wondering what on earth could number 1 be. My answer, any day of the week, is Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. I mean, where do I even begin with this ride? It's a wonder it even exists. And the ironic thing is it's at a park that isn't very great. It is incredibly neglected by its parent company Cedar Fair and never gets any major investment. But the key here is Shivering Timbers was built before Michigan's Adventure was purchased by them. So some way somehow, this remote middle-of-nowhere park in Michigan gets to claim one of the greatest wooden roller coasters ever built. Now as you're looking at this footage, obviously the ride's massive, but it's really just hill after hill after hill. Of all the layouts we've talked about, it might be one of the less creative ones. But it's the execution which I believe to be absolutely phenomenal that allows the sequencing to stand out. Even though the ride's just 122 feet tall, you'll notice it looks a lot larger than that, and that's because so many of these elements after the drop go very high in the air. This is possible because Shivering Timbers is perhaps the most efficient roller coaster I've ever ridden. It maintains its speed exceptionally well, and that's because it hardly burns any speed off of its turns. The only two instances of turns throughout this ride are at the far end to turn you back around and the Helix finale, both of which are packed with lateral, should I add. But it's all about the airtime on Shivering Timbers, and I think it might just have the most airtime of any wooden coaster I've ridden. It's one thing to have an impressive quantity of something like this, but the crazy thing is, each of these hills, particularly in the first half, provide outstanding airtime. Even moments that don't look like they'd be that powerful on this POV absolutely toss you out of your seat. It's almost kind of frustrating to say this because the park is so hard to get to, but you have my word, I will be back at Michigan's Adventure one day to get back on Shivering Timbers. If you haven't been on it before, make it a point that you must ride it if you are a fan of wooden roller coasters. It is just way too overlooked these days. But with that, my top 10 favorite coasters from the legendary CCI. This video goes out to all the people responsible for the design and construction of these coasters. I appreciate the effort that's gone into building and maintaining them so that so many of us are able to enjoy their rides today. If you enjoyed this list, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a like, and be sure to subscribe to Coaster Dash for more content like this in the future. Also, don't forget to check out my new merchandise store down below if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.